Welcome to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. Each week, join Travis and Josiah as they provide insight into the print on demand industry and equip you with the tools, advice, and strategy you need to achieve success and hopefully have a few laughs along the way. Now, on to this week's show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Print on Demand Cast. As always, I'm Josiah, joined by Travis. And Travis, this week I made a little makeshift video. I posted about it in the Print on Demand Cast Facebook group, but I have a little makeshift studio here in my loft studio apartment. I could say I'm coming live from my studio, but it would be apartment. So we're here, another week of Print on Demand Cast. How's things been going for you, man?
Good, man. It's been a long weekend. It was 4th of July weekend this last weekend, and as we talked about last week on the show, we were gearing up to do a farmer's market on Thursday, and that went really well. And in fact, I think we got a picture of it. If for those of you who are watching on the YouTubes, there it is. So that's the first one that we did, and then it went so well, we actually decided to go out again on Saturday to another market. And that was pretty awesome too. And so there's my wife, and so we did kind of two markets. So it was really crazy. And then, obviously then it was 4th of July, and then the next day. So on 4th of July, our church did kind of a like a carnival kind of thing, and
sure. There's some dunk. I saw some pictures, some dunking booths and the like.
Yeah, all that stuff. And so my son actually decided, hey, I'm just going to bring the booth again. And he set up the booth and nice. Carnival, and we just did it. So literally 3 markets over the last, over the course of 3 days. So that was busy. And then I'm in a rock and roll band. Yeah,
that's right. And, that is right.
We played on July 5th, Monday. So today's the 6th. Spoiler alert. I know I always peel back the curtain. Josiah always chastises me for it, but just trying to keep it real with the listeners. So yeah, it was a very long weekend, a lot of, being outside and on my feet. And then we came, since it was a long weekend, it means it's a short work week. So you come in on Tuesday and everything's piled up, all the orders are piled up. And then also we're planning on doing more markets. So now we have to kind of inventory and decide what sold, what didn't sell. And we're going to talk about all that stuff in the main event this week. But overall, the markets were a success.
Nice.
There were some leads that were created. As a matter of fact, I've sold 2 things since then, and I have a meeting with a lady that has a Colorado store, kind of a touristy store that wants to put some of our stuff in there. So we'll see where that goes. But I mean, heck, if I can break even and get leads like that every single time, it's totally worth it. So overall, it was a success. I know you also had a very busy weekend.
Yes, it was nuts, man. It was, thankfully my nephew and my cousin and my sister and my mom, came down for the 4th weekend. And so, as the saying goes, many hands make light work, right? So, yes, we got everything moved and situated into our new space. And so now it's, just getting all the logistics ironed out. Today was our first, actual day in there. And, like you, it's a holiday weekend and we have orders piled up and backed up and got to hit the ground running. But in a new space, you're going to discover so we need to have some electrical issues maybe we need to address and, stuff like that. It's all the stuff that you don't think about when you're just stoked and excited to move into a new space and you don't really know. The landlord or the owner says, yeah, you'll have plenty of electricity and it won't be an issue. And then, within the first hour of the day, it's like, hey, how come all of our heat presses are not working? So you have to address those issues.
Trust, verify.
Yes, exactly. That is so true. Trust but verify. So yeah, man, it was, and we'll get into more of that again in the main event as well. But overall, great weekend. Had a lot of fun on the 4th. Had family over, had friends over, grilled out. Apparently I make really good quesadillas, according to my nephew. So I they're chicken fajita quesadillas with some bell peppers and onions, and I just soak the chicken in like a fajita seasoning type thing. And so I made those for everybody on the flat top, and they were a hit. So it's the one thing that I can cook besides, like toast and cereal that I feel, and quesadillas aren't even that hard. So I'm always very surprised. I'm like, that's a good quesadilla. I'm like, it's really hard to make a bad quesadilla.
if you're cooking cereal, you've got a problem to begin with. So let's just start with that.
That's what I thought. I couldn't get it. I couldn't get the right crisp. It was too soggy or just burnt, but I couldn't get the right crisp, and it was driving me crazy. But yeah, man, lots of good things in progress. And speaking of good things, I sent you some texts over the weekend, a little, talking about peeling back the curtain, which for you, the listener, I never chastise Travis about peeling back the curtain. But peeling back the curtain a little bit, you and I are starting to toss around some ideas about some shirt designs for perhaps a PODcast merch store. In September, we will be on the 1 year of the show, which is crazy. So we're thinking maybe, after a year of inside dad jokes and references and the occasional information, maybe we should have a merch store and, see if people want to support the show that way. So for those of you listening, that's something that's in the works, and we're super excited about it. And I sent Travis some designs that to get his opinions on what you out there in the print on demand multiverse would think about these shirts, which is, I have to remember, it's how I'm referring to our listeners now, in the print on demand multiverse.
Mm-hmm. It's good. And we even talked about adding a new segment to our show, a really short segment, and I think we should just give it a try right now. Josiah, what do you think?
Yeah,
should we do our new segment?
Yeah, we should try it. Let's just do it.
We'll go for it. So we are officially launching our weekly dad joke segment right now. Josiah, you gave me several before, but go ahead and just enlighten our listeners right now with our weekly dad joke.
So, Travis, do you know how to organize a space-themed party?
How do you organize a space-themed party?
Plan it. And that is the first edition of this week's dad joke of the week. And there are going to be more coming to you each and every week. So you're welcome in advance, is basically what I'm saying. Because I know as much as you guys, might shit on the idea of dad jokes, you're going to use that at a party. And then you're going to tweet, you're going to Facebook message us about it and thank us for the humor we have endowed upon you. So that is the new segment. We're probably going to have a couple bumpers for it because I know Travis and he's going to make it happen. So it's a thing. So that's it for the dad joke of the week. Let's move into our point of interest, Travis, which I think is actually interesting to see that it happened. I didn't know that this day, I didn't know it would come. I didn't know this day would come. So why don't you tell the people what this week's point of interest is about?
Well, today, July 6th, Jeff Bezos officially steps down from his CEO role at Amazon.com. Look at that handsome young guy.
Look at him.
57 years young. I guess he's got bigger and better things to do, such as blasting into space on July 20th when his company, his company Blue Origin, it's his space company, and they have their Shepherd rocket. They're going to actually take their first flight on July 20th.
Right. And now you know why I picked the space-themed dad joke.
Exactly. Boom. It all connects. But it makes sense that he would step down as a CEO before he blasts into space because, as we all know, the last time a civilian went into space, it didn't go so well. I don't know if that's too soon, but after 20 years, they made a documentary, like you said earlier, and so I feel like that's
the statute of limitations when they make a movie about it. So either way, we'll say it was challenging. Okay, so in his place will be Andy Jassy. He'll be the new CEO. He's been with Amazon since 1997, and he ran the cloud-based side of the business known as AWS, which I'm sure, if you sold on Amazon, you've been on Amazon for any length of time, you're very familiar with AWS. And it is a $1.7 trillion company. Travis, if you're Andy Jassy and you've been given the keys to the kingdom, what are you thinking right now? Are you overwhelmed?
I mean, I'm sure, I have to be sure that this has, been kind of in the plans for quite a long time. I'm sure
Sure.
Andy knew for quite a long time that he was going to, be the heir apparent.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's not really a shock. And I don't think, I'm sure he kind of got through his jitters. I mean, AWS is a monster company. I mean, just in and of itself. I know it's part of Amazon, but I mean, it's a monster. It houses Netflix and some of the biggest online, cloud-based services that of. They're on AWS, and so he's no stranger to a large market share business. So I think he's probably going to settle right in. We were talking about what changes this could mean for Merch by Amazon or Seller Central or any of the other type of things that people of the listeners of our podcast might be interested in. And we've come to the conclusion that we have no freaking idea what's going to change.
No.
I mean, we just can't. We don't know. We don't know anything about this guy. We don't know.
Yeah.
First of all, to be honest, Merch by Amazon is while it's growing exponentially, it's a small piece of the puzzle when it comes to all of the Amazon ecosphere. And then, the Seller Central side of things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I don't think we're gonna, they're not gonna like cut our legs out from under us any more than they already do on a regular basis. So
right.
So I don't know unless you have any other thoughts on.
I don't. I'm wondering, as you're talking about Merch by Amazon being like a small piece of the puzzle. That scene in Lion King when Mufasa takes Simba up to the top of Pride Rock and says, "Everything the light touches is your kingdom." And Simba says, "What about that spot?" And he said, "No, you must never go there." What is that spot in the Amazon kingdom in your estimation?
What is that spot? That's a good question. I'm going to have to ponder that. Maybe I'll throw that in the Facebook group. Or if anybody else has an answer to that, we should ask that in the Facebook group. That's a really funny, we could get a lot of funny answers for that. Let's do that. Let's throw that in. Did you just freeze? Did I freeze? What happened? We are live, or I am live, but Josiah is frozen. But that's
Hello?
Disney. There he is. What happened? Are you there?
I can't hear you now. I don't know what just happened.
You can't hear me.
Where are my settings?
It says I'm in the show and that everyone can see and hear me. You guys need new internet out there. Yeah, I still see my signal. That's gonna suck if we have to.
I can hear you now.
Oh,
I can hear you now.
You
completely dropped out. Yeah, I don't know what just happened, but
you totally froze on the screen and
and then it went to the black circles, and then there was
no black circle. You were just there, and then you were back.
Yeah, my whole thing the whole thing reloaded. So I'll go back to posing the Simba question. So maybe that'll be a clean break. Okay. So I'm just thinking, as you're talking about this, that scene in The Lion King, Mufasa takes Simba to the top of Pride Rock and says, "Everything the light touches is your kingdom." And then Simba says, "What about that place?" And he's like, "No, Simba, you must never go there." What is that dark place in the Amazon kingdom, do you think?
That is a great question. I honestly, I would need to take some time to ponder that. As a matter of fact, I think what we should do is we should pose this to our listeners in our Facebook group. And,
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, another shameless plug for the Facebook group. We'll post that. We'll get some funny answers, and maybe we'll share our own thoughts on that. I don't know what that dark place of Amazon. There's a lot of dark places on Amazon, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just want to know: is it Merch by Amazon? The reason I thought about that is because you said it's a small piece of the Amazon kingdom, and I thought that's what triggered the question in my mind. So does Travis have an answer? It looks like Travis I have
a thought. So, Jeff Bezos takes him up to Pride Rock, takes Andy Jassy to Pride Rock. It shows him the kingdom. Says you must never go. He points. He says you must never go there. He was actually pointing to space, and he was like, "You can't go there because I'm going there, and if you go there, it will steal my thunder. And I am Jeff Bezos, and I
so
you
can't touch the new space."
Elon Musk.
You can't touch the space program, but you can have everything else. What do you guys think? What are you guys listening? What do you guys think is that dark space in the Amazon kingdom? You can get in on the conversation. printondemandcast.com/Facebook. Let us know. And then if any of you can possibly at all give us a photoshopped image of Jeff Bezos, Mufasa, and the Andy Jassy Simba. We'll give you a free shirt before the merch store is out. I don't even care. That's amazing, and I want to see it happen. So if you can make that happen, printondemandcast.com/Facebook. We'd love to see it. So man, it's crazy to see that changing, and it's interesting to see where it is going to go, or where Amazon will go under its new leadership. And now Bezos is worth an estimated $200 billion, which
crazy.
Absolutely insane. Yeah. And he's not even the richest man in the world. And that's just nuts.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Amazon's just literally shot to the moon in the COVID period, as everybody shifted to e-commerce. There's reports that, we basically shaved off 6 to 7 years of the e-commerce trend as e-commerce was slowly gaining ground on retail. We shaved off like 6 years in 1 year. Because of all the lockdowns and the shutdowns, and everybody just was more, they were okay with it. And, we're not going back. We're not going to go backwards. It's e-commerce is here to stay, and it's growing at a clip that is exponential. And Bezos' net worth is following it, and Amazon is following it. So if just to kind of bring this all home, if you're not selling on Amazon, you really, really, really should consider it. If you're already selling on Etsy, it's basically the same. The listing process is different, but it's still, you're the seller of record. You list the products. When they sell, you sell them. There's, instead of paying 20 cents per listing, you pay $40 a month, but you have unlimited listings. So Amazon is the king of the jungle, pun intended. And so consider jumping on Amazon.com, not just on the Merch by Amazon side, but on the Seller Central side, where you're actually the seller of record. It's really worth it. So that was today, Jeff Bezos stepping down. Before we go to the point of interest, the main event, I did want to mention one thing about last week. We had Jiro from Vexels on, and he announced we had a 2-week kind of contest, if you will. And you have 1 week left from the airing of this episode, which will come out July 7th. You have until July 14th to take advantage of the 30% off deal that Jiro provided us, and to get your name entered into the drawing to have your entire subscription fee refunded. So so far, we literally, just before we press record, we checked, and there has been one person who has taken advantage and bought a lifetime membership. And if that stays the case, that one person is going to get a free membership.
It's refunded. Yeah,
totally refunded. So if one other person joins him or her, it'll be a 50-50 shot, et cetera. You do the math, but you have 1 week. We just wanted to let you know there's only one subscription so far. So there's a great chance that you could win, however much you invest. If you do a year, you'll get the year back. If you do a lifetime, you'll get the lifetime back. And that's printondemandcast.com/Vexels to see that. And like we said last week, it's a great company. They have really great assets. We wouldn't promote otherwise. We don't promote anything that we don't use. In fact, I literally downloaded a mock-up from Vexels.com today to send to a customer. So we are using it in our businesses, and it's a good service. So I'll leave that there. I just wanted you guys to know that you have 1 week left before that timer kind of expires, and you don't have a chance to earn or to get that full thing refunded.
Sure. Absolutely. So don't let that one person just get away scot-free. Go in there. Your chances are great to get that subscription. And like Travis said, I've been all over that Vexels site in the last couple of weeks. I'm downloading mock-ups and designs, and it's such an amazing tool to have for your business. So avail yourself of that. See if you can get that for free. Again, printondemandcast.com/Vexels. So with that, Travis, let's move to the main event of this podcast episode. This was kind of stemmed out of conversations we were having about the markets and the vendors, basically you being a vendor of those markets, and us moving into the new retail or our new warehouse space. And we had this conversation kind of spark about the idea of workflows. So we're going to cover that for this week's main event, because workflow is very, very important. One of the reasons why it's so important to have a specific workflow implemented is it's going to save you time, and time is money, right? So that's one of the really important reasons. If you have a business, and even if you're just a one-person show, you have to have a workflow implemented to make sure that what you're doing is the most conducive environment for productivity. So, Travis, let's get into it, man. Let's get into workflow for this week's main event.
Yeah. So I think not only does it save you time, which could save you dollars with your labor if you have, employees, or, a lot of people, we've talked about valuing your own time. So technically when you're working, you are labor. And so by being efficient with your workflows, you're saving money with your own time. And then it makes that process, if you document these workflows, you really think through these workflows, and put them down somewhere, it can make the process easier for your new employees, or for somebody that you eventually want to hire. We were talking about this before we pressed record, and we were talking about how McDonald's is a great example of documenting all of their processes. So when somebody comes to work, it's like, page 84 in the handbook, and just read the first 3 pages, and then you're qualified to run the fry machine, because it's literally push this button, take this out. It's a very documented workflow. And in fact, they made a movie of this. The whole process of how McDonald's kind of came to be, and called The Founder. And which was Batman as Michael Keaton as Ray Kroc. Right? Is that how it was?
Yes.
Why don't you tell them about this picture you've shown here for the YouTube viewers?
Yeah. So this movie, I haven't seen it. It's a really fascinating movie to watch. If anything, just to hear and learn the history of McDonald's and how the actual founders of McDonald's got the short end of every stick possible in that business negotiation, because Ray was such just a shyster, man. He was a good wheeling and dealing. So he was a shark. So what you're seeing here in this picture is they line up, it looks like in like a tennis court or basketball court, something like that. And so you can see that they have kind of laid out the workflow, and having their employees walk through this workflow. And in the scene in the movie, they redo it multiple times. They'll be frustrated and see something doesn't work, and okay, let's come off, and they'll wash off the chalk, and then they'll redo the whole thing. So when we were talking about workflow, this scene was just like, this came screaming to my memory, because I thought it was such a cool moment in that show to kind of demonstrate the importance of the workflow. Because for McDonald's, it was get them in, get them out, the most people served. How can we do that efficiently and not sacrifice quality? Now, some could argue, and I might agree, that as time went on, they sacrificed the quality and still kept a great workflow. But that was the whole point of this scene, and I thought it was just really, really cool to see them work that out.
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening, basically, like he said, they're on a tennis court, and then they've taken tape measures and measured every, like the multi-mixer, the fryer, the griddle, and they've, used the tape measure to make those squares the exact size of those things. And then they brought in their employees and made them basically mime making the things, so they could watch, okay, how many steps does it take to get from the griddle to the front counter, or or to the station where you put the stuff on, or whatever. And they just measured all that because they wanted to make sure these workflows were really, really thought out and efficient. And so so that's one example of a workflow. So there's several kinds of workflows, and I mean, a workflow is a workflow, I guess, but the different kinds of workflows are going to depend on your desired output. So what are you trying to accomplish? And McDonald's example, of course, they were trying to accomplish efficiency, speed. They wanted to cut down the scene right before that overview of the tennis court. They were talking about how to get a burger into someone's hand in 30 seconds versus I think it was 4.5 minutes or 5.5 minutes or something like that. And that was how they shaved off all of those seconds, was by really examining it and going into the nitty gritty details and figuring that out. So your desired output is going to determine your workflow. So when we're creating a workflow, there are some steps that we can take, and full transparency, we Googled these, but I kind of want to go through them and then maybe talk a little bit about each one of them, because I think for print on demand, we can maybe give a little bit of insight in how we've used these different steps and what we've done to implement specific workflows in our businesses. So let's kick it off with the first one. The first thing you want to do is you want to identify your resources. So what do you have to make all of this, to make this work? So you may need to buy some things. You may need to buy a table to get that press up higher. Or in our case, what we did for some of our workers, or we bought table extenders. So we've got, just the regular 6-foot tables, 6x30-inch tables. And then I didn't buy them. I literally grabbed some PVC at Home Depot and cut I think it was 12-inch tall things. And we just, 4 for each table, and it raises it up a good, 8-10 inches. And so you don't have to have you're not hunched over. So identifying so that's one way of improving a workflow, and identifying your resources, saying, I don't have any PVC, so I need to get PVC. I need to cut them to size. Is there anything that you can think of where you guys had to kind of identify a resource that you had or didn't have to improve a workflow, Josiah?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we worked on recently was we're improving the workflow when it came to printing sleeves, because sleeves are very difficult. They can be very difficult to print on a DTG, printer. So we've actually pivoted to an entirely new solution. But before that, we had to identify, okay, what's the issue and how can we make this quicker? Because sleeves were taking way too long. And the amount of time and labor that it was taking was actually getting to the point where it was like, is this even worth it? Or do we need to charge $6 instead of, $3 or whatever? Because this is crazy, and it's not fast at all. So, one of the things we actually did was, using equipment that we already had. It was a hat press, actually, for sublimation. We figured out you can pre-treat the sleeves, cure them on that press in 40 seconds, and then print them, and the fibers it's flat, and it just runs super quick. Wow. So we got it dialed down quite a bit, and now we're actually implementing Transfer Express, because this client that we have does a lot of volume of the same stuff. So now we just have screen printed transfers, and now it takes us literally 6 seconds to do a sleeve. Wow. that was another another way of refining resources. But I guess another resource that had to be there was the volume to justify investing in those screen printed transfers as well. I would say too, when you think of resources, you do think of equipment and you do think of stuff like that. But I would say also, the manpower, the people, the resources of labor. If this is getting to the point where you can't do it by yourself, well, it might help the workflow when you bring someone else on and have them as a resource, just kind of help expedite the whole process. So I think that's another thing you can think of when it comes to your resources that you have available to you.
Yeah, we'll talk about a little bit more about my experience with the market, but that's very applicable to that particular thing. Do I have the resources the human resources to be able to go to these different markets and be,
Sure.
potentially even in multiple markets at the same time. I don't know that that'll happen, but you get the idea. Yeah.
Sure.
So the second one, second step in creating a new workflow is going to be to list out the tasks that should be accomplished. And this is just, pen and paper or, computer and keyboard, whatever your preferred mode is of kind of brainstorming and really get into the details. And this is hard. This is the hard work of creating a workflow. You have to think through every single thing that goes from from the start of that process to the end of that process and go through it all, write it all down. Because what you're going to do in the next step is you're going to figure out who's accountable for each one of those steps. And if it's you, if you're a solopreneur and you're the only person, well, guess what? Your name's on every line. You're accountable for it all, baby. But if you have, maybe you have, so in our case, for our company, we have one person that orders the stuff. And then we have a different person that produces the stuff and ships the stuff. And so if the person that's getting the order, the person that's going to eventually produce it doesn't share with the person who's going to order it that they need a particular garment or a particular product to print on, well, that order's never going out. So there is a workflow that has to take place that we've had to basically step by step go through and then say, okay, you're accountable for getting your needs for, we call them NAs, or not available.
Sure.
So all of the NAs, all the NA products you need to get to the person that's going to order. And then the orders will come in. And then when the orders come in, that person will check them in and make sure that we got all the things. And then they will hand you, or they will say, hey, we got an order in, you need to check your NAs. Then it's back to you. And so everybody has a different piece of accountability as we go through that stepped list. And the more people you have, maybe you have a warehouse person that's in charge of checking it in. That's different from the person that orders it. They need to be in communication to say, there has to be something that's set in place for that as well. For us, we print off the order sheet, and then when it comes in, we literally check it off as we count inventory quantities. I'm sure you guys do something similar, but all of those things have to be thought through. Who's accountable? What's going to happen in this workflow? And it has to be really detailed. It's very important. So that's what we do. I'm sure it's similar in your guys' case, Josiah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we have our production, we have our shipping, we have our sublimation, techs and departments and producers. I myself, I handle a lot of the ordering and checking in and, making sure the inventory is where it needs to be as far as, the sheet we use to track it. And but delegation is really important because you can hire someone on, but if you can't delegate responsibility to them, you're not really taking much off your plate. You have someone that can push a button, and a lot of people can push a button. You could be pushing that button. You know what I mean? So if you have someone there working with you, you're giving them additional responsibility and assigning things and accountability is not only good for them to feel like they are in charge of some stuff and they feel like they have responsibility and leadership to some capacity, but also good for you because you train them and you get that off of your plate. So it's important to let people know what they're accountable for, what they're responsible for, so that when there is that miscommunication between production saying, hey, I don't know, we don't have this product, and the ordering person says, no, we do. I told you. They know where to go, and they can usually resolve it amongst themselves without escalating it to you, who you have other things you're working on. So super important to not only make people accountable, but let people know who's accountable for what. So when they have questions, they can go the right way. So I think that's very, very important. The next step, we already kind of talked about this next step in that McDonald's example, but to create a workflow diagram, to visualize the process. This is something that we did when we moved into the new space. We got a piece of paper and kind of drew out like, okay, this is, the inventory section. And then once it goes to there, here's the pre-treat and here, whatever. So you draw out that whole thing. knowing to a certain extent that you're going to probably tweak and refine stuff.
You're going to break it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because on paper, a lot of things look good on paper, right? Like communism looks great on paper, but when an implication, when you practically play it out, it's a shit show. It's never worked. So, a lot of things look good on paper, but you have to actually implement it to kind of refine that process. So, I'm sure you guys did that too when you went into your new space. There's probably a lot of diagramming happening to figure out what's going to go where and what the best flow is.
Yeah, I mean, you joke about it all the time. My whiteboard back here to take over the POD world. I mean, it's always got a diagram on it, because that's how that, that's a great example of, writing it all down, making a little box and kind of that Venn diagrams and, what all of that stuff, and just bubble, line, and connecting the dots and all of that stuff. So yes, we absolutely did that. We still do that, and we still break those processes. Yep. And we, and literally, like, the last step, I'll like let the cat out of the bag. It's to reevaluate all of these workflows. And so, that's kind of what you're setting yourself up to, you only have a limited amount of information when you're, diagramming these things, and because you've never tried it. And and as a matter of fact, the very next step is to test the workflow that you created. So you create this whole thing, you've diagrammed it, you've identified all of these things, and you're going to test it, and you're going to see if it works, because eventually there's, for us with, we implemented Order Desk for capturing orders from our clients, and, and we've gone through so many iterations of that, trying to figure it out. Luckily, we don't have a whole lot of people that I have to like go back to and say, hey, we're doing it this way now. and a lot of things that I can kind of, there are more internal things that I can kind of tweak behind the scenes that the customers don't even see. But yeah, so once you're testing this thing, and you're basically just seeing if it works, if it's going to get the outcome that you actually desired. And then from there, you're going to need to train your team on the workflow. And for us, we have virtual assistants that are, live outside of the country. Yeah. And then we have staff that, come into work every day. And I think when you're training your team, it's communication is key. And it is a challenge to train your virtual assistants. Or that you have to like record videos or type up things, all of that, versus just kind of walking over to John and showing him how to do whatever the thing is, or explaining it to him, in person. And so that can be a challenge too. I don't know, how did you guys, or how do you train your team on your workflows?
Yeah, so VAs is a lot the same. I mean, I do a lot of videos, kind of, showing the big screen, and then, small box in the corner, my voice kind of overlaid, explaining, this is the workflow on how to list on Amazon. This is the workflow to, submit designs and that kind of stuff. So, but when it comes to the actual training, we've actually developed what we call the production Bible, basically. So it's a training manual where it shows them, this is writes out, this is what the process is. And then we take, the first week or two and train them and walk them through it. But if they have any questions, there's this pamphlet or this, brochure or packet there that they can look at. And then it touches on, when you're printing a shirt, make sure that it's like this and this, at least this size. And so it kind of details shirt, pillow, tea towel, sign, that kind of stuff where it can all be located. So we do a lot of hands-on training, not only on how to produce items, but the workflow, and then try and explain the reasoning behind the workflow, so they understand, they gain a better understanding of why we implemented it, and we're not just asking them to jump through hoops that because they might think it's dumb, or they don't agree with the workflow, or they have a suggestion. But if you share with them the reasoning and what like you said at the beginning, what the desired outcome is, it can kind of help them refine their suggestions by what we're trying to reach, the final point is. So that's how we train a lot of people. And then, the next step after that is just deploying that new workflow, again, knowing that you're going to have to refine it, and it's going to have to be revised, and you're going to have to rewrite it. And it's not one of those things like with Order Desk or even with us with Deco Network. It's one of those things where there's this temptation sometimes when you have to revise it again to be like, well, this just isn't what I want. This isn't going to meet the needs. It's not what I thought it was. But you just have to refine the process for yourself. All the tools are there in the software or in the product that you're trying to implement, but sometimes you have to continually revise what that looks like on your end. So the next step would be just deploy it, get it practically, implemented, and kind of see and watch for the hiccups and watch for your employees who, are intelligent and they know what they know what they're doing. And so if they have suggestions, don't just bat them down, listen to them. And because they might see something that you don't see because you're not in the trenches, as it were. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. And it's important to give them that freedom to be able to say that and kind of empower them to be able to speak up and not just kind of follow your every whim and command. You want to make sure that they know that they are a valued resource, and their experience and their experiences matter because you're trying to create this thing. So for us, like as we've been implementing the Order Desk, we basically moved our Etsy store, which has less volume than our Amazon or our Walmart. We moved it over to deploy the new workflow, but test for bugs. And so as we've been doing that, we've been working very tightly with our VA, who is unfortunately at this point doing two workflows, because we have the old workflow and we have the new workflow, and but we wanted to make sure that the new workflow worked before we moved the majority of things over. And so that's kind of a sub point, I guess, when you're deploying. If there's a way to deploy it slowly, I think that's wise, because like we've said, there's inevitably something that could potentially break. And if you can break it in a small way, it's better than breaking the whole dang thing. So so then the next obvious thing is, like I said earlier, the last step to creating these new workflows is to reevaluate that workflow on a regular schedule. And so this could be something that really is it's very easy to, I finished that task and I never have to look back again. It's very easy for a CEO or a president or, kind of an entrepreneur person just to see the next thing, the next task, and go down the road and accomplish that. And that's good. That's a skill that benefits your business. So to kind of mitigate against not looking backwards, put that kind of a regular schedule on your calendar, so it becomes another task that you have to perform later. Maybe every 3 months, every quarter, we look at this and we just go through it and we ask the question to all of our people, is this working? Is there a better way that we could do this? And make that part of your to-do list, I guess. Because it's very important that you follow a regular schedule on these workflows because they will change over time. Even if, you could get a new piece of equipment, something could change on one of the platforms that you're selling on. There's so many different things that could happen. So, just make sure that you have a regular schedule to reevaluate that workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like we said, we started this main event. The reason that we had wanted to talk about this is just based on our conversations before pressing record, and with myself moving into the new space and yourself with the farmers market, kind of two different examples of why workflow is important. I know, with us, we had, like I said, drawn it out and we had it all mapped out. And even in the setting up process, we're like, this is going to flow really well. And then today, our first full production day in the new facility, our production techs were pointing out like, this isn't really going to work. And we noticed stuff like, that isn't quite as seamless as we thought it would be. And so we had to readjust some stuff and kind of rearrange some things to make it easier for the techs to do their job without, costing productivity. It's, again, one of those things of, like you said, you feel like, okay, we know we got that done. We already set it up. It is what it is. And now I got to focus on setting all this other stuff up in this new space. But if your workers aren't being productive and aren't getting stuff out in a timely manner, pretty soon you're not going to have a lot of volume to help you stay in this new production space. So that was our thing. Our whole day today was just kind of revising, reimagining, and trying to find solutions that we didn't know existed, because again, it was just on paper. So
what were you saying?
Now, so tell us about your farmers market example. How was that figuring out the workflow, the setting up, the tearing down, the staffing, the products? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's still a work in progress, but there were several things that kind of came out of the farmers market that we realized, oh, we don't have a workflow for that. I mean, it happened so fast. So we knew we were going to do it, but we thought we were going to actually do it this next Thursday and not last Thursday. So so everything went kind of from 90 miles an hour to kind of a race to the finish, so we could actually have something for Thursday night. And then, as if that wasn't enough, we decided, hey, we're going to also do one on Saturday that has different designs in a different city. So we did one in Erie, Colorado, and we had Erie-based things. And then we did one in Louisville, Colorado. And so we needed Louisville. So Friday was like crazy too, just getting ready for the Louisville one. So the one thing that we realized, and we actually, kind of took steps today to begin, was, we need an inventory for what we have that's, just kind of the general stuff. And then what's for this market. If we're going to do this market, we need these things. If we're going to do this market, we need these things. And so just that whole organization, we didn't have that dialed in, because now when we've, after we've sold through things, we need to go, what did we sell and what do we need to replenish? And then what are some ideas for things that actually did sell well that we can do more of, maybe with different designs or whatever. So that's, kind of part one, just the internal inventory issues that we didn't really have a workflow for. And so we've got to basically figure that workflow out. Then the next thing was ordering. So someone comes up and they say, hey, I want that shirt and I want it in a small. Well, we already sold our smalls, or we don't have any. How do we capture that sale and not just let that person walk on? And so there's a lot of things that we need to think about. How do we do that? Do we have it? We were originally thinking, well, we'll do order forms, but at a farmer's market, it's really it's hard enough to get them to commit to just buying the thing that's right there, to also have them fill out the stuff.
Something out.
And, it doesn't really work in that environment the way you would maybe hope or think that it might. At least for us, it didn't. And so we're having to reimagine that. How are we going to capture that sale? And so we have some ideas to kind of go through that. And then the third thing is, how do we follow up on potential leads that we get? So, I mentioned, early on in the show that we've already sold 2 things that happened kind of after the fact. That they called in and they said, hey, I wanted this one thing. And this other guy was a total custom shirt that he wanted. And so, I designed it today, and we're going to, he's already paid for that shirt, and he's going to pick it up in, a few days. And then how do we follow up on those things? And, because some people are coming up and saying, hey, I work for, the school or the city or whatever, and I need 700 of X. Okay, well, that's a big lead. And I want to make sure that we have a workflow in place to not only follow up, but potentially even bring that, how does that work into our existing workflow where it's mostly e-commerce? Now we have these local things that we need to kind of integrate in there. So there's this 2-sided thing. And so it's really kind of had to step back and go, okay, we need to dedicate some time to really thinking through this. So that's basically the whole reason we said, hey, let's do a thing on workflow, because we're both in the thick of it.
No, totally. And it sounds like, part of the things that we had to address here, in the last year or so is, we're predominantly e-commerce, but then like you said, we've had, some conferences and some people say, hey, like we need 800 of these shirts or 800 pieces total. Well, bulk jobs and e-commerce print on demand, really 2 different business models.
2 different business models. You're right.
So you have to like develop the other facet of that, because inevitably, people don't understand screen printing, DTG, whatever. Right. So they're going to ask you, hey, I need 800 shirts. Is that doable? And you're like, I don't want to say no under any circumstances. So we need to figure out how to facilitate this thing. And so that's part of that, is just figuring out, because that's a whole different workflow, from the invoicing to the inventory, to the mock-ups, to the art approvals, to the design process. Completely different. And even at some points, the pricing, because it's being paid for up front, and a lot of that labor is on the e-commerce side isn't even there. So there's a lot of that needs to be figured out. And you're right. This is why we were wanted to talk about workflow on this particular episode. And if you guys listening have ideas on workflow, let us know. Again, we're going to do another shameless plug here for the Facebook group, but we really would love to know if you have ideas about workflow. If you want to give us a tour of your facility or your production space, I don't care how big or small or whatever, I would love to see it, because it's always cool to see how people have things set up, and to get more information or more ideas. So if you guys want to share that with us, we would love that. printondemandcast.com/Facebook, and let us know some workflow ideas that you might have. I think that'd be fun to see, Travis.
Yeah, I'd love to see some, even if it's your desk, you just take a picture of your monitors and all that. That's cool. Yeah. So share that with us, because literally, a year ago at this time, that was my workflow. It was like everything was done at this desk, and then and now here I am, a year later, it's totally different. But please do share that, guys. And maybe if you have an idea for me, for how to kind of do some of the things that I was talking about with the markets, I'm open to ideas. We've got some things in the works, and but I mean, I think that's the whole benefit of the Facebook community, is that we all learn from each other and share with each other. And so we would encourage you to go there and, get involved.
Yeah. Please join the conversation. Again, printondemandcast.com/Facebook, and let us know what your workflow looks like. So for that is the end of this week's main event, the end of this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening and being a part. Again, if you have any other suggestions, questions, the Facebook group is the best place to ask us those questions, or you can email us info@printondemandcast.com. We'd be happy to start a conversation with you there as well. As always, we are available on all the major podcast platforms: Google, Spotify, Google, Stitcher. I said Google twice. Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher. Any of the major podcast platforms, wherever there is a podcast, the PODcast is there for you as well. So thank you guys so much. Remember, printondemandcast.com/Vexels. You have 1 week. You have 1 week to sign up and avail yourself of the amazing resource that Vexels.com is. And don't let that lucky one subscriber right now just walk away with his money and still get all the benefits. Challenge him. Step up to the plate. We'd love to see some more engagement there. So printondemandcast.com/Vexels. Don't forget, 1 week left. And with that, for Travis, I'm Josiah, and we'll see you next week right here on the Print on Demand Cast.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you've got a question or a suggestion for the show, send Travis and Josiah an email at info@printondemandcast.com. Take a minute to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget to subscribe now so you don't miss next week's episode. See you next week.